Got it.
What's up?
Man,
How's your
thanks for
day
having me
been?
again.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Another beautiful day out there.
Yes, yes, it is. It's gorgeous up here. Started off a little chilly, but the sun is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I was gonna ask you, last time we were talking about Christmas stories, and we watched White Christmas 1954, and it was so good compared to some of the crap we have now. And then I started thinking, yeah, have you seen it?
I've never seen White Christmas.
It's so good. It's actually really good. So all these crappy modern musicals where they just, start singing and dancing for no reason. Well, in the beginning of this, it's a war, and generals pulling up and they're like, sir, we got a good one for you today, and they start doing their act. And it's like, man, that was the context was so well done.
Right. I've heard
like,
that all my life.
So
having
good.
Getting to go to live theater and stuff, and there always be an adult voicing what I'm thinking is my logical mind's thinking this is stupid because they just go into song, and even as a child,
right?
Maybe it's a boy thing. It's like you're thinking, why is it this?
No,
happening?
It's not a boy
thing. I love
There's
the idea that the story itself, singing is part of the story. It's not just a random thing that's happening to sell a singer.
Yeah, they actually they do it very well done. But so thinking about that and like Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's like we have so many good Christmas themes, Christmas archetypes.
Oh yeah.
Do you know of any New Year's archetypes, or even a song like this is specifically? What is that?
It's a film from 1925.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah,
okay.
I cannot remember his name, but he writes, directs, and stars. And if you've ever seen or heard of Ingmar Bergman's Wild Strawberries, the old man protagonist in Wild Strawberries is the director of this silent film called The Phantom Carriage. It takes place on New Year's Eve, and the story within the story is the last person to die on New Year's Eve becomes the new Grim Reaper.
Interesting.
And it's very Christmas Carol, and it's like this morality play, and you're getting flashbacks to this guy's life and understanding why he's a POS, how he got to where he was. It's a great flick. And
sounds like they should attempt to redo that one. If it was in the 20s, great story. Sounds like though.
Yeah, you could absolutely update. It's one of those timeless classics. The story is any culture.
And what was it called? What was it called again?
The Phantom Carriage.
The Phantom Carriage.
Yeah,
interesting. 1920s.
Real spooky. Real spooky. It's a Halloween movie too.
Wow. Okay. And that's interesting. So is it and it's New Year's, and that's sort of like I'm trying to think of anyone who's done a Christmas Carol besides Scrooged, which I love. Scrooged is one of the best Christmas Carol remakes of all time. Tell me you've seen Scrooged.
I grew up with that movie, and I loved it as a kid, would rewatch it all the time. We had like a bootleg VHS tape of it where my dad took 2 VCRs because he was sick of renting the movie over and over. But tell you what, it may have just been where I was at the time, but I watched it a couple years ago, and it really bummed me out.
What? Why?
So it would be interesting to watch it again and see, do I get that same vibe? And while we're talking about Bill Murray movies, the same thing happened with What About Bob? I grew up loving that movie as a kid, and I rewatched it a couple years ago, and I just thought, this is an ugly movie. And I can't give you any specific examples, but both Scrooged and What About Bob both left me not cold, but just kind of like, I didn't find it funny that time. But again, maybe it was my own headspace at the time where I think I did not receive the humor.
No. As we get older, I think Scrooged becomes more wholesome than anything, and it like makes you a little introspective and like,
That's probably what it was, because there's some the same with the dad where he's like giving him the meat. And then at the end, the scene with Karen Allen where she's all white and she's crying. And I mean that, I guess as a kid I love that stuff because I like the whole dark 80s fantasy stuff anyway.
Yep.
It really gets into you, man.
Have you seen Twins with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger?
It's been a long time.
We just watched it. I'm the crap that's left over.
Yeah.
We just watched it the other night. It holds up so well. Oh my God.
I would definitely have to revisit that.
I mean,
little when I watched that one.
Yeah, it's like the technology. So he's calling him on the old 90s cell phones. But it's like, well, Julius has never experienced any technology. So that doesn't matter. It's like, it turns out to be one of those fucking timeless classics that doesn't, the fact that they, show you a little bit of politics and technology in the movie doesn't really matter. And it's like, how many rare movies and stories are there like that can actually surpass the culture it's in, and like Journey to the Interior of the Earth is like that. Like every time I listen to it and he starts, Professor Lidenbrock starts listing off his scientific instruments that he's going to need for his voyage down. I'm like, this is sci-fi, but it's written way back then, and it's like incredible. It's still one of my favorite books of all time, narrated by Tim Curry. If you've never heard him narrate Journey to the Interior of the Earth, best ever narration.
I would love that.
Yeah, best ever.
It's really cool. My son and I, we watched maybe the first 20-30 minutes of Conan the Barbarian last night.
Yeah,
before it was
fucking
like,
love that movie.
We gotta go to school, in the morning. But at some point, my son on his own asked me if this was an old movie. And I said, yeah. I said, this is 82. So, your daddy hadn't even been conceived yet. And I asked him, does it look like an old movie? And he said, not really, but I could tell. So
interesting.
I love hearing and seeing how kids react to movies. That's when there's good storytelling happening.
He's got a good head on his shoulders to be able to tell, like, yeah, it looks good.
So
but I can
some
tell
people
it's
know that
movie.
It's that intuitive thing where you're looking at a movie. Other people could be watching a movie and it goes to commercial, and they get confused because they think they're still watching the movie or watching the TV show. You ever seen that happen?
I was like that as a kid. For years, I thought the commercial in the middle of The Wizard of Oz, I was like, well, but where's the man in the wagon? He was always there as a kid, and it was a fucking commercial. I never realized it till years later, and I was like,
awesome.
What?
Awesome.
That was just blew my mind.
It's cool the way our brains receive things, where we might totally accept something, or it trips us up just enough to where we know something's different, but we can't really put our finger on it. And I love when that happens with movies. I don't know if there's another visual media where that happens.
A lot of people feel that way about this Phantom Shazam movie that was I saw it, Alec. I remember I was sitting in my fucking living room on a Sunday morning, and this show came on about two kids summoning Sinbad as a genie. I saw the damned movie.
That stuff
blows my mind.
Either somebody figured out how to tap in.
I don't know.
To
that's so crazy.
Like how to create a false memory in somebody. But it's either got to be intentional, because I don't know. It's got to be like an intentional mind experiment, because that I know I thought the same thing, and it really wasn't like, oh, I heard this and it kind of sounds vaguely familiar, and now I've created this false memory. It was like, oh yeah, no, for real. I've kind of had that in the back of my mind here lately, just kind of wondering, where's that at?
Where's the Sinbad movie? And then Shazam is like this white guy DC actor. I never did get into DC Comics, so when I saw this Shazam, I was like, well, what about Sinbad? He's Shazam. Right. And then I looked into it. There's a Shaq movie. They're like, somebody was like, oh no, you're just racist, bro. You're just mistaking Shaq for Sinbad. I'm like, nobody in their right mind can mistake Shaq for Sinbad. That's not possible. So
what are the Sinbad movies in the 90s?
Oh my gosh.
Because you're saying Shaq is a genie.
He was a genie. He was a genie.
But
no, wait. Sinbad was the genie. And somehow Shaq became the genie. I don't know how this happened.
It's not like he was on a TV show or a skit in the 90s where he's dressed that way.
Not like he was in the movie. There are similar pictures, and they're like, oh, you must have seen this. Like, no, I didn't watch. I was a little Christian kid. This came on family entertainment, television on a Sunday. It was anyway. So the Mandela effect, it makes you wonder, like, are we really living in a narrative or a simulation or something like that?
We definitely experience it that way. I mean, I don't know if it's like our own mismemories create a misreality, but essentially, even if that's not physically happening, it's still happening as far as our brains are concerned.
Yeah, so, and that's
to me, it's the same thing.
In the matrix of things, that's all that matters. It's happening to our minds.
Right.
So many people, especially,
the neuroscientists say when you watch a podcast, your brain reacts to it as if you're hanging out with friends. The same with people who use pornography. Their brain, or not even pornography, just that physical act tricks your brain into thinking you're getting laid. According to everything I've ever heard. So if that's how our brains receive images, sounds, or artificial stimuli, I mean, is it the same with tripping?
I don't know.
Our brains are having these experiences, so you can in theory take MDMA and spend 6 hours with somebody and live a lifetime with them, in a sense. People who've done that when one of them has a terminal illness. So
it definitely has been shown lately to be huge with wiping. So like psychedelics specifically wipe old lines, old thought patterns, but MDMA can wipe old traumas and abuses and things like that, and let you reconnect with someone you may have lost in the past. And these things are like, I see them as very useful tools for awakening, tools for enlightenment. And the people that take this stuff and look at the pretty colors, like, you're doing it wrong. Like,
they watch TV.
You're abusing something.
Someone's
that's
tripping
like,
on acid and they're like just sacred, Comedy Central.
And on that same note of abusing something that's sacred, it's like what you were talking about before. I've had to explain this to Vivian. It's like, this is why people get so strung out on some drugs. Like, the sex drive, when it's turned on, overrides all other things, even hunger, even fear of death, things like this. Like, when it's really turned on, it overrides everything else.
Fear of consequences.
Yeah. And so what's happening with people who, especially with things like heroin, is they're reconnecting that sex drive, which is the most powerful drive, with the need to have this drug. And it overrides everything else in their life. And I told her, and it goes the same way for like girls that may start masturbating. Like, let me just see if I want to think about another girl and see what happens. You're wiring yourself wrong. You're wiring yourself wrong. And that's what's happening, and for so many people, and we're about to get based here, like you said, for so many people who are saying, oh, they're born this way, show me any baby with a sexual preference. I will die on that hill, Alec. There is no baby with a sexual preference.
And I don't, as insensitive as it may sound to somebody, I want them to understand my logic around why I would see it that way. I know what my sexual imprints are. So it's like, hey, I can connect these dots and understand this is what turns me on. This is what I go to. This is what, like, along the way, those sexual experiences happen. Those, yes. So I don't think it's necessarily a diss to say that lesbianism, for example, is because it was imprinted on somebody. Anyway,
it's interesting.
I'm with you.
No, it's a fascinating topic, especially like
heterosexual, homosexual. You have your sexual imprints.
Oh yes, Milo,
your sexual preferences.
People like to give Milo a tough time, and he tells people, well, first of all, I married a black guy, so you can't get me there. Gotcha. Smart of him to do that. He can't be called racist. But when he talks about, how he became gay, and he talks about it like that, he says, I remember not being gay. And then a priest began molesting him. And he said that turned him gay. Right. And he said that turned him gay, and that he was happy for it. He was happy that it happened because he found himself sooner or something like that. And but he specifically says, I wasn't born this way. I remember being turned as a child, and that's fascinating. We need to hear more truth like that.
People aren't born artists. They're born,
it's nurtured,
predisposed to have that ability 100%.
And then if you're pushed in that direction, if you're the type of person who wants to experience new things, who's open to new things, and then you get sort of shoved into it, it's going to change you, especially if you don't have a proper family that might be able to talk you through this kind of stuff, and older male role models and things like this, and like it was fascinating, his story. And it's in so many ways, it makes you wonder, this whole thing about, I was born this way. I'm like, you give me any hungry baby and show them a ripe dripping boob with breast milk, or a ripe erect penis dripping with pre-cum. Tell me what they're going to go for first. And if you even think for one moment that they're not going to go for a boobie, there's something wrong with you. There is something wrong with you as a person. Babies don't have a preference like that. They're hungry. They're hungry for milk. That's all they want. There is no sexual drive or impulse inside a baby. I will die on this hill.
And from day one, those imprints could be happening.
Yes, they are.
I really wonder if there's a study of, let's just say, men, for example, who as babies weren't breastfed compared to being breastfed. See if there's any correlation.
That's interesting.
There.
There is definitely about criminality.
You could also have a first sexual imprint where you may not have been breastfed, but that was part of your sexual imprinting. And I don't know. It's just, it's very interesting. And I also just want to say, for all the flack that Freud gets, that's kind of like how people only know about Freud because he was wrong. But it's like, the one thing, if you're going to say he was right about anything, it's the thing that everybody makes fun of. And that's, your parents have a huge effect on that. Imprint, your attraction, imprint, how you want love. And that also goes for other authority figures. It's not just your parents. Just like Milo and the priest, camp counselors, teachers, friends, older brothers, uncles. You get all kinds of imprinting.
The teachers should not have, this whole thing about don't say gay, even though that's not in the bill. It's like, well, I'm raising a child right now. So are you, and so for half the world to be okay with, so how many teachers in the South are hardcore Christian and have been told, keep the Bible out of the classroom? You have no business pushing your ideologies onto those children. But at the same time, now these same people, and now at the same time, all these same people are like, well, my sexuality is my identity. If I can't talk to the children about who I am, don't you fucking think the Christians felt the same way in the 90s?
Right.
It's
the same thing on two different sides. And my experience teaching was it was the people on the opposite spectrum, the people who were very critical of Christianity in a prejudiced way. They were the ones who felt safe. And of course, I was teaching at private school, so it's definitely a different dynamic.
You've already been a teacher, huh? How long have you been doing that?
I taught for 2 years.
Nice.
I always thought that if I was going to have like a secular career, a non-creative career, that teaching would be the way to go. Maybe because I spent so long in academia, my authority figures that. So maybe that's what some of that was. So I'm grateful that I did teach for 2 years. But man, so many things that we were talking about earlier are really applicable to seeing, young minds, impressionable people, and also seeing how plastic the brain is.
Oh yeah,
come back from the summer and see a child who has what appears to the outsider a complete personality change.
Yeah, there was a Babylon
really
Bee article about that recently. What did they say? Teacher disturbed as half of her students come back from holidays as detransitioned.
Jesus Christ.
I thought that was funny. It was like, well, when you don't know whether or not it's a satirical article anymore, that's so good. That's so perfect. They hit the nail on the head with that one.
I just don't understand. I don't understand the idea of there is no such thing as gender, and it's all cultural. But then
the construct.
But then how does transitioning make any sense? Why can't it's definitely, I mean, I don't want to tell people you're perfect the way you are, don't change yourself. I think that's a really toxic message, but the whole idea of change the things that you have no control over, like if you had like, say you have a bunch of heterosexual dudes and it's like, all right, man, you hate yourself because you're 5'1" and everything you see is talking about being tall, so here's the surgery, it's for your mental health. That's terrifying to me. That's terrifying to me. And I mentioned on the last podcast that in the deep South, you actually have some really liberal pockets, at least where I live, where you have 2 universities, one in walking distance, and I really feel for people like that, the outsiders, the ones who aren't accepted by society. I'm a very open person, as you were mentioning earlier. My personality is so open to where if I am interested and intrigued, I can definitely embrace thoughts and ideas that could even be polar opposite to my worldview, if that makes sense.
No, that's the mark of an intellectual.
I don't get the whole. It upsets me, but I feel like there's no way to voice my visceral reaction to all of it.
No, you can't.
Hurting someone's feelings, and that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say.
No, as the good guys here, we don't get to have a visceral emotional reaction. That's what they get to do. We have to maintain our composure and be able to come up with a measured, some kind of a reasonability, because in their world, the level of their reaction somehow justifies it even more. It's like, oh, I'm so triggered that A, B, and C. And this is what Jordan Peterson was talking about. This is what clean your room actually means. You can take it literally if you want to, but what he's actually talking about is, don't be so quick to shout down reasonability with your emotional jargon and nonsense. Like you're sitting here in my face and you're shouting at me, but you're not making any sense because you're so full of rhetoric. I can't talk to you. Nobody can even speak to you right now. You need to get yourself in order.
He's holding their dad for them.
Yeah. I love Jordan Peterson. God, he's a great guy.
He's changed lives. He certainly has.
Yes.
Changed mine. Thinking in different ways and just going back to the basics. I think that's where Peterson really thrives is, man, you said something and it got me thinking about
collect your thoughts.
Just like kids, it's so awesome being a father. My son is a lot like me. It's the way he watches movies and reacts to them. But I feel like my experiences, whether it was the trauma of feeling like kind of this androgynous kid, I'd answer the phone and people would think I was my mom, and then accepting that identity, not fully, but just thinking like, oh, I'm an effeminate man or something like that.
No, I get it.
Sure, a lot of men feel, and so I feel like at the end of the day, even though I may be perceived as an enemy to the pseudo leftists, at the end of the day, I can't have peace knowing, my kid may want to, wear a sundress because he's playing in a punk band and thinks it looks fucking cool. Yeah, I'm not going to have a problem with that. Now I remembered what you said that made me think of something I wanted to mention. Mardi Gras coming up, Carnival. we don't have these customs and celebrations and rituals and initiations. Dude, carnival, man, put on the dress. If you're a woman, put on the strap on. It's everything is backwards day. It's like, you know, you're going into the underworld. And
get it out of your system, kind of thing.
Yeah. Experience it, know it. As a man, I can say that I've done a lot of things career wise, creativity wise, things that I thought, oh, I always wanted to do this, and then I do them, I realize, nope, really like the idea of it. I think it's cool, but now that I've experienced it, I know this is not what I want to be connected to. And
I've had to change my whole career because of that. Oh gosh. But what you were saying before, being able to think of an idea and not completely commit to it. This is what it means to be an intellectual. You have to be able to entertain an idea without believing it. And if you can't do that, and I've won many a debate with this line. It's like, because people, there are some people who do not even want to consider your stance. And it's like, if you can't entertain this without believing it, just entertain it, then you're not an intellectual. You're a snake in the grass.
And why that's so scary for people is because to entertain an idea, you do have to accept it, believe it, hold it.
Just for a moment.
And I think that even the most secular atheists, this is a part of
existence. Bothers them.
They don't want to be right. You may not have ever a person may not put it into these words, but what it is we don't want to be associated with certain things to the extent
for them it's
you want to carry certain ideas in your brain for a minute. Be guarded. That's a good thing to have that impulse, but to be aware that it's a legitimate fear. It's just like trauma. You know, there's a story of two women who were kidnapped and raped, and one woman went on with the rest of her life, got married, and you know, it was an awful thing that happened to her, but she went on. Other woman, totally catatonic. And I believe in the specific story, maybe the woman who was able to move on had an even worse experience with the overall ordeal. But it just goes
terrible.
Absolutely. And it's such an extreme story. And that's why it does I'm using it as an illustration of how the way we react to things is so powerful. With my own early sexual experiences that in a sense were certainly traumatic. I mean, I guess, yeah, absolutely. Awesome, awful. I definitely thought this is not supposed to be a part of my story. It's the same thing if you get divorced or lose a child. And I know it to talk about these things. It sounds
it's tough
to use several things as an example.
But men who are
we don't want that to be a part of the story. It's not just a bad thing that's happened to us. It's like this isn't my bio. This isn't part of my story. You know, I don't. You know, I'm sure a lot of women feel that way. Just to assume something about women in sex. You know, I believe women lose their virginity much younger than men. So the whole like, oh my God, I lost my virginity to that guy, or I lost my virginity now. I mean, it must be horrendous. And I had some of those same, you know, thoughts with not my first sex experience, but my first like sexual kind of experiences. What you know, and certainly all involving older people. You know,
but if you had
older, but
I think you had like classic. Milo. If you had like Milo accepted it and said, maybe this is who I am, and kind of leaned into it, you'd have been a different person. Your entire life would have been different because you control your story.
Right.
You wrote your story. You're like, no, this is not part of me. And some people are like, well, maybe this is me. And they go into it and you're creating yourself. You're doing it.
I can see that going two different ways. It could actually be really great. Or if you're lying to yourself, it could be a thing where Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. That's why it's so fascinating. And it's impossible for me to kind of separate myself from these stories and events. It's good stuff, man.
Some girls are a little tomboyish. Some boys are a little effeminate. But the idea that this, like, for instance, this boy wouldn't be able to grow up and be a strong, proud, gay man. Why does he have to be a woman trapped in a man's body? And who gets to decide that? Parents? This bothers me. That whole thing bothers me.
And there's money. There's money up in all this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in another cultures, a lot of these people would probably be shamans and holy people.
Yeah, whether they wanted to or not. It's like we were discussing this in ethics and anthropology. And it's like, well, because they were trying to say, well, you know, they were holding it up as a shining example of how we should be. And I said to the teacher, well, consider that maybe one of these kids that goes through these things might not want to be the shaman. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, well, what if they don't want to be this particular thing? They're going to be pushed into it. Isn't that the same? And all the rest of the kids I was the oldest. I still consider them kids because they're all college level, like 20s. They're like, wow, that makes sense. Yeah, they're really the same when you think about it. Like, yes. Those teachers, man, those professors, they will try to warp the way the next generation thinks. There's so much Marxism, postmodern Marxism. Thank God for Jordan Peterson for pointing this stuff out, you know, and for people who are like, what's that? Basically, it's Marx came up with ways of tearing a nation apart because he thought they went in cycles and you could not get out of that cycle. He never considered a utopia. He wasn't a utopiast at all. That wasn't his thing. He thought it was a never-ending cycles, and you wanted to always try and be on the top. When the pieces all got knocked off, you wanted to try and be on the top because it was never-ending cycles of the bourgeoisie and proletariat. And so how these people are doing, they're taking a postmodern dynamic view of things and taking things apart, putting races into their little piles, deconstructing all of this and trying to use Marx's theories of destroying the nation in a postmodern way. It's postmodern Marxism. That's the easiest I can explain it.
Clayton, it's daddy issues all over the place.
All right, explain that.
All roads lead to there's an absent father. All roads lead to there's a man who ain't a man. I feel real bad for these women out there because I mean, of course they're looking around and they're like, "This is it. My dad was a piece of shit, and so are all y'all." But that's what's so beautiful about us being able to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important to write things down and process your thoughts that way because what we're doing is absolutely dangerous. But to realize this is how fucked up things are. Maybe if we did the opposite of what we're doing now, we can fix it. The idea that we've been kind of touching on this whole time, to have just enough trauma to where you can save your son, to where you can help the next generation. It's not about, man, I really wanted to quote Oliver Reed, kiss the nose of every dog and make love to every woman. Like, I really want that to be my story. But, you know, at the end of the day, I could be the old man sitting on the stump who can discreetly give some advice, lead in a gentle, assertive way.
Yeah. What was his, it was the guy that just passed in May, is a black guy that interviewed women for relationships.
Samuels. Kevin Samuels, 100%. That talking about someone who changed my life.
I just found him last night and realized that he was dead. And I was like, what? How is it that I've just found this? Because one of the things he said, he was talking to a woman about, you know, she deserves this and this and this. And he was saying, basically, you know, when you bring a child into the world, especially, and you've made a union with that man, regardless of who or what he is, you need to French toast your happiness. I was like, damn, I love that line.
Right.
That's the greatest. It's a wonderful French, and I think that's his way of saying, you know, fuck in front of a camera and able to get it out to the audience. You know, fuck your happiness. French toast your happiness. Yeah. It's like, man, that is the best.
I had
the best line.
My teaching job and was mowing yards, laying tile, trying to get by. Like to everyone around me, they thought I was insane. You know, just took this high risk. And I heard Kevin Samuels say, you should, if you're trying to change your life and get where you should be right now, you need to be putting in at least, what does he say? Does he say 40 or 50 or 60 hours? I can't remember what he says, but the first job you're putting in, let's just say, I'll tell you what I'm doing now because of Kevin Samuels. After hearing that, I walked around downtown for like 2 hours. I couldn't do anything but just move. I wasn't mad. I certainly wasn't mad at Kevin Samuels, but I was just like, this is kind of what's been missing. I knew I needed to quit my job. I knew I needed to go into business for myself. I knew I needed to be a problem solver for people who have problems that I've had.
Fascinating.
But when he said, you know, get you a job where you can, I'm not even worried about how much you're making, get you a job where you can be putting in, let's say 50 hours. And then you're putting in, no, let's say 60 hours. Because that's what I think he said. 60 hours working for the man, and then put in another 20 hours a week working for yourself. So glory to God. I after literally praying as I came up the steps to this certain business, wow. I am now working at this business a minimum about 48 hours a week. It usually comes out to be 48, 51. And I'm trying my damnedest to put in another 20 hours a week to myself. Now, have I been making mistakes and messing up? Sure. I'm still trying to figure out how to do this, but every time I do something, I realize that was 2 weeks on some BS that didn't work out. Now I know don't do it that way.
Like, I have something that might help. So if you have an idea and know where to write it down, and you know, the crappy stylus with a stupid little note app, and I've never been able to use it properly. Seriously, make a Google Voice transcript for your ideas and message yourself with voice to text.
Okay, yeah, I love that. Yeah,
and you'll receive it back in a text. You can read it to yourself, and you can keep these ideas. But another thing, if you're ever having a debate with someone about these sort of ideas, and they're being long-winded, aggressive, they're not really adhering to the rules because it's not professional debate, you know. But we want to at least make it professional as we can, you know, when we're debating someone without an arbiter there. So what I like to do is to ask them, okay, let's see if we can go the next few phrases of this debate as haiku, 575 or 757, respectively. And it completely re-engages their brain to the creative. And you can't be angry and emotional if you have to like mathematically construct a haiku and you only get this many syllables for your idea. And I find that that's a beautiful way to just completely, it's almost like debate judo. So
but are they going to agree to something like that?
Every time,
kind of folks.
Every time I've had them agree to it. If they want to continue the debate, yeah, it's like, look, nice. I don't think that's the thing is like, are you being an intellectual or not? Can you entertain this haiku idea? Let's see if you can entertain it. If you can't, then you're not an intellectual. You're a snake in the grass and you're beneath my time. And then, you know, that gets people, especially, you know, pseudo intellectuals who have to prove themselves in an argument. It's like, well, let's do this in haikus. 575 or 757 respectively. And I throw that to you or anybody else to try.
You better be careful with that. You might start making some friends, and now you've got these assholes that want to hang out with you. Speaking of asshole, I've really been after teaching for 2 years and now having a authority position where I'm at now. It's been really interesting to kind of walk that line of being assertive, but not being an asshole. because in my experience, without even meaning to, I think I'm being funny, but without even, I mean, because usually I'll say like, don't catch the boss, don't let the boss catch you doing that, anything to take it off of me that I'm disciplining. But, it's come to light several times where the people that I had to be like, what are you doing? Like calling them out, they'll try to character assassinate you behind your back, because we live in a world where we can't punch men in the face anymore. So I think it was initially more of a feminine way to do things, because ladies don't when they do, it's awesome, don't get me wrong, I love a good girl fight. It's just been amazing to me, but I think that's my fault, because I just have that nice guy persona that I've embraced out of cowardice and the need to be liked.
Well, are you a monster?
I can definitely be a monster, and
you can look at this ugly mug and see that, it's like I try my best to play nice. I'm a monster, and I recognize that about myself. I got anger issues. Like I've had a few
my
people.
Family sees that. I can holler at my son if he's walked too far ahead of me, on a trail, and then he's pissed at me for the rest of the walk, just because like the hint of mad dad, the hint of we're not fucking around. I've called your name twice now. Get back where I can see you. But meanwhile, at work, it's like when you finally do tell somebody, like, all right, I'm done with you. Like, you're getting written up. And then it's like, oh yeah, that guy, let me tell you about him. So
I had this happen recently with
all that.
With a coworker who he was being aggressive to someone who came in to get their pizza, and I was trying to, because I've been a essential worker for the whole epidemic up here in Arkansas, because I couldn't find another senior building engineer position that would pay me when I'm. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion about how electronic manufacturing has fallen out. But so
thanks for keeping it running for us, man.
So whatever. So there's this guy up there, and I'm like, we need to have a talk about how you're doing this. And he's like, you're not my manager, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, I don't need to be your manager. This is just a man. Yeah, this is just a man to man. And he's like, bro, I don't have to talk to you. I said, okay, well, if you can't talk to me man to man, then you must not be a man, huh? And from that point on, like, he gave me the biggest fucking attitude, and we almost came to blows inside the store. And I'm I've got my hands behind my back. He's like, look at you, look how you're standing, you're so stupid, bro. And I stepped up to him and I said, if you grab me or touch me aggressively in any way, I'm gonna break your fucking trachea. And you should have saw his face change, because that was the only moment where I let the mask slip and show him that Michael's a monster. You need to back the fuck up. And since then, he hasn't looked me in the eye. And I felt kind of bad about it, So I don't like to, because when you have,
it does feel bad.
It makes you feel bad when you let out the monster and you're trying to restrain it. That's a Jordan Peterson thing. It needs to be completely justified that you show that kind of, you need to have that kind of force in your soul, but it doesn't need to come out unless it's truly justified. And I started to think, was that justified? And then I started getting the character assassination behind the back thing. He wouldn't look me in the eye, but he's apparently trying to get me fired. It's like, man, such passive aggressive nonsense. It's like, I'd rather just fight you. I'd rather just have a fist fight. True. Let's just get this out of our systems.
Now you can be so self-aware and mindful, because I'm sure you already are, but just another reason to think every word that comes out of my mouth is essential. Because anyone can take it and be like, oh, they said this and kind of embellish it.
Right. And it's not every word. It's every moment. It's every action. Movement. It's like, if you want to have a meaningful life, then every moment in your life matters. Even this one. Look at this beautiful moment I've just been given. Just to talk to you about this moment. The moment gets better, because I'm recognizing it. I'm living in it. I'm living in the present, and it's gorgeous. It's like the energy shifts. It's good stuff. That's the good work. Taking something bad, like even a story like that, and like
turning
it on its head.
Yes.
And now it's like, that's okay. It's okay. That's
take right. Shit and make it beautiful.
Yes, that's the good work.
Yeah. That's the alchemy.
That's the alchemy. I like that. Who let y'all out? Don't bark anymore.
Stay off the porch if you can't keep up. Oh man.
Yeah,
we're gonna struggle now, so we can play later. You know.
I was thinking last time I was trying to ask you about what you thought about the idea that this assembly of archetypal psyche, this thing that we have in the human mind and what it means to be human, in what way is it wrapped up with the dog? And I know it is, and the mushroom too. The dog, the mushroom, the domesticated cattle, these things are important. And it's like in whatever moment we could consider the genetic soup and the cultural magical spark happened, it's like, this is the first human, the human condition, boom, it started right there. I think a lot of things were part of that equation. I think a dog was part of it. I really do.
It
has to be.
Their eyeballs, the way they can connect with us. The dog is the only animal. My son's name is Virgil. The dog is the only animal where I could be like, Clementine, get over here. We don't do that with cats.
I don't do that with cows. I go
You're
through
calling your dog a human name like a grandma would her grandchildren. Come here,
it goes John. The other way.
Peter. John.
I get all four of them mixed up. I've got one child, damn it.
The dog star, brother. The dog star. What's that about?
And see, and I don't believe in fur babies. I think that's a dumb idea. I think if you want to have children, go get children. Pets are pets.
Incredibly
and then
offensive.
like what you're saying is absolutely true. Yeah. You get their names mixed up. It's like in some part of my mind, they are equivalent in some way, even when I'm consciously like, no, the whole idea of fur babies is offensive.
You just triggered the fuck out of me.
I know. Fur babies. Like, go get a fucking child or just call it your pet.
And pets do complicate life. For anyone listening to this who is not grounded, like you don't have the money to pay property taxes and you have your homestead, like for people like that who are trying to get their lives together or try to get their life started, don't get a pet. I love dogs, but man, like it's just like, don't go out there and knock somebody up, man.
It's a responsibility. Yeah, it
is such a responsibility, and then you have to bring other people into it. If I want to go out of town, someone's got to be with Clementine. If Clementine gets out and mauls somebody's dog, it's just animals, pets, they affect other people. Cats are walking around giving pregnant women cat AIDS.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah, because
there's also no leash laws for cats. But God forbid a dog get in a cat person's yard.
I think there should be laws against women who are considering becoming pregnant, even being around a cat.
Yeah, very strange. But that's too superstitious for our time.
Well, and it's totally scientific, though. I mean, there is a neuroplasticity. How would you say that? A change, a dynamic shift in the neuroplasticity that happens when it goes in. So, okay, particularly it's when the woman changes the litter box. So there's something in the feces that goes up into the air, goes in through the olfactory, and the nose is so easily connected to the brain, it will just immediately get absorbed and begin to change the way the brain acts.
Lord have mercy.
So yeah, a cat's meow. Isn't that a book? The cat's meow is at a particular hertz to mimic a baby's cry anyway. It does that anyway. But with this other shift, it's like a woman who's pregnant now thinks of the cat as her baby almost and cannot ignore it. you know, it almost is like another child. It's like it affects their brain from changing the litter box. Like, this is a real thing. You can look it up.
Oh, it is a real thing. How many perpetually single guys do you know that have cats?
One. And we give him shit all the time. We're like, yeah, bro, that's the only pussy you're ever gonna get. You know who I'm talking to,
right?
Gentry.
I mean, I have my pussy substitutes. You know, they always come in a bowl.
We give him hell for that.
But the cat is an interesting.
It's a little lion.
Not even a physical manifestation. It is a substitute of the thing.
It's fascinating. You know, I was giving, we have a Siberian. She made me get it. And I was giving it a haircut with scissors. Don't ever do this. And I lacerated the poor thing. Because it's cat skin is very thin, but the hair is very thick. So if you're trying to cut through a tough knot on a Siberian and you start to go into the skin, the only indication you're given is that the cat starts purring more. This
cats are weird, man.
This traumatized me. I put a 1.5 inch hole. I'm looking at rib meat, and he's like, you know, and rubbing his little head on me like
that's some Hellraiser shit, man.
I was just like, sit, Lolly, come get the cat. We got to go. I didn't even. It was traumatizing. Like, because you'd expect the cat to freak out, but
wow, dude, cats really are Cenobite.
Yeah,
angels to some, demons to others.
That's so weird. That's such a strange thing. Yeah. I don't like thinking about it.
Real, not a Clive Barker fiction, but real.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm gonna run in here and
we've been talking about like all these animal things coming up. I'll give myself a shout out. Number one, it's not on my channel, but maybe if you go to Alec Hawkins on YouTube and look at my community posts, you'll see a link. If not, I'll make sure I do that after this. Where we did a Christmas Carol radio play. On Christmas Eve. So I'll definitely have a link for folks. It's no Scrooged, but it's no What About Bob either. And then also I had this experience recently, and I captured what was happening on video and made like a 1.5 minute long video about it. The person that was kind of involved with what was happening asked me to delete it because I think it really affected them. But I hate to hurt anybody's feelings, but at the same time, I'm glad it affected them because it shows that they have intellect, they have creativity, and they're seeing things that happen in real life as real. Like, and the same way that somebody, I knew this girl that did this, but I strive to do it too, and my neighbor obviously did it as well. She would use her dream interpretation book for things that happened in life, not in her dreams. So what happened was I live at the end of some houses. My neighbor lives at the opposite end. I've known this guy a long time.
I got to think about that because that's just fascinating. But if you're interpreting the dream from the real, then you're interpreting it for Brahma, not for yourself.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like taking the oath of the
fascinating.
You're seeing everything as real, but this is basically what happened, and maybe this video will get relisted one day. The context is that this is an older guy, and I relate a lot to him, and that's why his actions were affecting me. One, because he was my friend, but also two, because it's like seeing the outcome if I took the same road he has. So anyway, that little bit of context, I don't want to say much more, but I was letting my dog out, and I hear the sound of a chain link fence being hit, and my God, it was a doe. No, actually, no, I think it was a buck. I think he did have antlers. He did have antlers. There was road work happening right by my driveway. So this deer had somehow ended up in this area, but was going northwest because they couldn't run this way because that's where people were working. And
yeah, we really fucked up.
And right where it was smashing into the corner of the fence was the backyard of my neighbor, who without really saying much, I'll just say I saw it as this icon of somebody refusing to get up and move the other way, and instead just hitting their head on the wall when they should be out changing their lives. Like they had literally just crammed themselves into a corner and just said, it's got to be this way or it's nothing. So I see this deer and like blood's coming out of its eye socket and its nose. I mean, it's just smashing itself into this fence. It ends up running between my duplex and his duplex and goes around to the other side of the fence. Because now there's like a neighboring fence. So it's still just smashing its head. Meanwhile, I'm throwing my shoe at it and trying to get it to go off. And it was so terrifying. It was like I was seeing a spirit, like I was seeing something spiritual happen. And I think it freaked out my friend because I think he saw it the same way. I think he would agree with me. Like that was no deer. That was some real archetypal shit. And then what was fascinating for me was, since I related to him so much and was projecting myself into that so much, I ended up having a dream. Maybe not that the night of, but the next night after I kind of talked to people about it and there was drama over the video, and I actually dreamt that it happened again. But in the dream, I approached the deer because one of my fears when I was trying to scare it away was that it was going to clobber me, just hove right over me. But in the dream, I came to it.
How old were you?
It was one of those dreams that shook me awake because the deer was coming right at me. This happened just a few weeks ago.
Oh,
right. And I got footage of the deer and made a short video saying my friend's fucking up, and look at the symbolic poetic shit happening in his backyard.
Yeah,
and he got pissed and asked me to take it down.
And then it infected your psyche. Have you ever had dreams of a reoccurring animal figure?
That's a great question.
While you think about it, I had one.
In my recurring dreams, I
had one when I was a kid, and it was a monkey in a baby carriage.
Wow.
And I had to go and take care of it. And then I remember there was a long period of time that I didn't have that dream. And then I had it again, maybe a year later. And it was like all the memory of the time and the dream place came back to me. And I was like, oh no, I forgot about the monkey in the baby carriage. And I was scared to approach it, and I finally got the courage to approach it. And it was a little terrible monster thing. And it jumped out and I woke up. And
is that you, the monster? You weren't acknowledging the monster?
Well, I don't know. See, Danny had a lot of ideas about that. And but not long after this, I had another dream that I didn't think was a dream. So I'm in the living room, coming to, like, why am I here? Walking through the living room, the lights on, and I look, and there's a gorilla, and he's standing in the carport, hunched over, and this son of a bitch is biggest gorilla I've ever seen. His head, his shoulders were like larger than basketballs, and I was like, there's no zoo around here. Why the hell is there a gorilla in our carport? And then suddenly it turned and was up in the window and looking at me with these eyes. And it was a psychic anger and hatred in those eyes. And I just knew he was like, he wanted me to come outside. And I wasn't going to come outside. So I remember backing up slowly and going around the corner and ducking down and just like being like, oh crap, maybe it'll go away. And then its eyes followed me through the furniture and walls. And I remember it was still looking at me somehow. And then I woke up in bed with fully clothed and all my covers and sheets on the floor. Very strange. Very, very strange. So
it's interesting.
I don't know.
The whole Sasquatch thing too.
I know, right?
This archetype, and the cryptids and how they kind of function as these psychic archetypes. I've got
some stories. We're gonna next podcast, cryptids and hauntings from my childhood. Oh my gosh, Alec, you want to have some good stories? And these are true stories. I could write a whole bunch of true stories from just the weird shit that I went through as a kid.
Dude,
good Lord.
I mean, let's do it because Werecat Books started out as occult erotica, but I put out one story that is not erotica. It's still psychosexual. And
psychosexual.
I also want to do and
define psychosexual real quick.
I would call my novelette Scratch on the Lock as Blue Velvet meets
Scratch on the Lock. That's such good imagery for a title. I commend you on that title.
Oh, thank you.
Interesting. Scratch on the Lock.
It's got some Blue Velvet vibes, but it's more like
don't you fucking look at me.
There's a YA novel in there somewhere, but it turned into Blue Velvet.
I love Blue Velvet. It's such a crazy movie. Rest in peace. You're so fucking suave, man. I would like to.
Yeah, dude. I'm actually one of my my goals for this quarter is to put out a book called My Haunted Hometown, where it's a collection of kind of Northeast Mississippi ghost stories, but instead of being just another Mississippi ghost story book, number one going to be modern stuff, so it's not going to be rehashing like old Waverly and that kind of thing. It's going to be stories that I either heard from people or I have a lot of personal stories, but I'm going to
Danny has some
either they kind of revolve around someone who's not me, or I may kind of change it a little bit to where I'm not talking about myself. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
I feel like it would work better if it isn't just, hey, here's my crazy ghost memoir.
Right. I don't mind doing that. I'm the crazy guy. I don't mind doing that. But what you and Danny should do is collect your stories together and maybe like rewrite it as two people experiencing those things.
Well, I don't want to fictionalize it too much. And what I'm saying is you could do your own where, I could do mine. Now, if you wanted to just say like, oh, I don't want to write the book, but you can incorporate these stories, that's fine. But I kind of like the idea that instead of writing a Ghost of Mississippi book, I'm actually writing about people I know who messed around with occultism and really hard parts of their life. Because I feel like occultism always attracts people who are in a spiritual crisis. Who you turn to the dark arts because you got to pay off that debt no man can pay.
Yeah, but the thing is, back in the 90s, a lot of the Christians were turning to occultism to try and understand what hell was. Hell's bells.
Protestantism doesn't talk about any of that stuff. So of course you're going to have your what's his name, John, and I don't know. There's two psychics in particular that I'm thinking of. But yeah, I mean, just like we're talking about, when you don't have these initiations and rituals, people turn to charlatans. But what I'm saying as the founder of Werecat Books is, if you wanted to write that stuff down, we could totally put it out as an ebook. And then we have multiple books on hauntings. Because Werecat Books isn't going to be just erotica. It seems like occultism and kind of transgression, which talking about occultism is, are more of the foundation of that company.
Well, I would be proud to do that. But more than just an ebook. I've
eventually print books. I'm just trying to keep it real simple and the resistance down in the beginning.
No, I'm not talking about print books either. What I'm thinking is like audio narration. You know, I'd love
okay,
to read my work.
Look, this is the radar love cool. Happening right now, because I agree with you 100%. Before I print a book, I'd rather put that effort and energy into doing audiobooks. I thought of adapting Scratch on the Lock as a play, but maybe what I should do, instead of complicating it that much, a radio play. Yeah. Instead of complicating it that way, what if it was just a straight audiobook, but something with multiple voices? It's not just one person reading it. That could be interesting and a good way to keep it simple. Because like I said, that Christmas Carol radio play we did, the dude who produced that said he was totally willing to do that, and I love that idea.
I just think Roy Dotrice would have made the most amazing dungeon master. You know who Roy Dotrice is? Okay, so he did the Game of Thrones book, The Song of Ice and Fire. So when that was first done on audio, he's the one who narrated it. Okay, and he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most clearly distinguishable different voices from one single narrator.
Oh wow.
So he's talking as this person right here, and it's like, what do you want, girl? Well, you know, I just would like this, you know, and it's clearly distinguishable characters. And like, so I've been working as a dungeon master for a long time to get those sort of timbres and pitches out of the voice. And I'd love to narrate my own work, maybe even somebody else's. Like I would love that.
You couldn't get to the atelier, you could still record something where you're at. Send it to me and Peyton. Dude, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head, and that's such a cool synchronicity. Because as much as I fetishize books, audiobooks were around long before the printed word ones. I mean, it's the first storytelling.
Yes, it's the first podcast, and it's like, and there's
around the fire.
It's so you have. Okay, so there's like Douglas Adams reading his own work is phenomenal because he puts certain emphasis on certain words, and you get an insight into how he thinks. But Jules Verne has been dead for a long time. So you take someone like Tim Curry, who is a very cultured man, very intelligent man.
Master.
And a master, good God. And
I've been watching Legend on repeat, by the way.
Legend? Oh, I love Legend.
My son and I were watching it last night before Conan.
Darkness. Oh, you're gonna make me want to go see that now. He plays the best Satan. And I don't know how someone was like, yes, the Rocky Horror guy, put these gigantic black horns on him, you know, and make him like this Herculean god of the underworld. Like, Jesus, man, they did a wonderful job. There's a lot of people who still have not seen Legend. It's like, dude, Tom Cruise, Tim Curry, go see the fucking movie. Good God. They should put that back in theaters. It's probably going to get redone now, a reboot now that we're talking about it.
You couldn't even with the unicorn horn
they'll try
just a little bit. I'll take that over CGI any day. I really have never seen a CGI film where I felt like CGI worked for this. This is a movie that needed CGI. Give me stop motion animation. If you
there's one.
Give me two-dimensional animation.
There's one that I would say, but no, that's actually no. You're right. I was thinking either Who Framed Roger Rabbit or or it's still cartoon or Cool World, and that was still people drawing things. That was still before CGI.
They ever got to it was some of the stop motion stuff you see in the 80s, but even then, it's still so herky jerky, and it has no blur, so it just looks weird. Just embrace the artifice. CGI is like people gaslighting themselves and saying like, no one's gonna know it's artifice. It's ugly.
Yeah, I can't think of like a really, man, I'm racking my brain too of a movie that's really brought in CGI as like a mixed media. So it's a regular movie. We're not talking about complete CGI.
The shot of the Brontosaurus standing up in Jurassic Park, that would good. Probably be the closest I could ever say. And isn't it weird that it's 93? That's kind of when CGI 1993 broke, but it's never been that good again. It's like sending a man to the moon. We can do it one time.
It's like Hook came out, and Hook didn't have
Yeah, that's just blue screen.
Hook had just had special effects. There was no
special
CGI.
Effects, but no
yeah,
CGI.
They had old school CGI. Yeah, I think
Beautiful
you're right.
stuff.
Jurassic Park would have been the first tasteful CGI done.
And then it never happens again. Even Independence Day is mostly miniatures. There's probably some kind of CGI in there. But
yeah, I fucking hated Jar Jar. I didn't like any of the things.
It looks awful.
I hated all terrible. That crap with because you know, as great as Nielsen is of an actor, you know, I have a set of skills. You know, he's a great actor, but they didn't line his line of sight up with any of the characters in any of his scenes, and so it just looks stupid.
Right. You know, it's bad cartoons in a movie where people are telling themselves it's excellent special effects.
Yeah. You know, I love Star Wars, but at this point, looking at the entirety of it, it's like, man, I'll rewatch The Next Generation, the whole thing, Voyager 2, before I watch another Star Wars movie. That sucks.
I'd love to get into some of the Star Trek stuff, especially that Star Trek Next Generation and the 90s stuff that follows. I really don't have any interest in the original show.
Oh, no. We don't speak of the original series.
But I can remember just the reverence that people had for it. And plus, it just has that soap opera aspect. And as a storyteller, I've never really watched a soap opera, but stuff like Twin Peaks, stuff like The Sopranos, it's all soap opera. And I love that shit.
Yeah, it's like, so Lucas was trying to rewrite an Oedipal tale in space. And he did it perfectly. You know, when Luke sees his sister, and in the story, if you look in literature, his sister is supposed to be the spitting image of his mother. And what does he say? She's beautiful. He immediately falls in love with her. It's an Oedipal tale. He kills his father.
Yeah, that is one of the best things about that original trilogy is you get the thing where they claim, oh, we decided later for them to be brother and sister. But I mean, come on, she kisses him in Empire.
I've had this debate with people. Yeah, it's like the kiss was there, and there were signs of him already telling an archetypal Oedipal tale. And it's like you have to accept that, man. You know, it's like he was telling Oedipus Rex in space, and he did it beautifully, very tastefully. And so to try and compete with that, what was it, Paramount, the other studio, they were like, well, what do we have the rights to that's like a sci-fi space thing? And they're like, well, we've been replaying Star Trek for 30 years. Do it. You know, make the movies. So they made the whole Star Trek series, you know, and then it had a modicum of success. And then when they passed the reins on to the Next Generation, something happened there, man. I don't know what, but some kind of fucking magic happened with the writing staff and the actors and Roddenberry.
Good.
Yeah,
when you take a pre-existing thing and mash it with something else.
But it's because Roddenberry was there. And see, I've watched behind the scenes stuff, and Frakes and Picard, you know, they
Frakes.
What did I call him? Picard, Frakes and Stewart, which would be you know, number one. His number one, you know.
I love Jonathan Frakes. Yeah, he's my man.
Yeah. So Roddenberry set both of them down and was asking them questions, very specific questions about technobabble. You know, and they were getting everything wrong. And he was like, look, I don't think you guys understand the difference between the deflector array and the warp shield. You know, it's like, thank you, Roddenberry. You know, it's like it made sense in his mind, you know, and and adhering to the original structure and then bringing out creative things out of that structure instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I think allowed them to explore more. You know, because he was there as like a rock, and too many reboots try to reinvent the wheel. It's like, you know, like after the female Ghostbusters, you know, I didn't really like it, but I was like, okay, I guess the female Ghostbusters. And then on a behind the scenes interview, they said, why don't they just let the old Ghostbusters die and let us have it, you know? And I was like, okay, fuck you guys. And I think that's what Bill Murray said too.
Completely wrong. I mean, that's like when someone has disdain for the source material, of course it's going to be a piece of shit that no one's going to relate to.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, and this is what I was talking about with archetypics, which is something we might touch on next time. It's like how Hollywood is pushing these archetypes that are made for diversity that don't hit home. They're not good. Like the boss bitch that just has to realize how amazing she is with no arc, with no challenge, with nothing overcome.
No arc, right.
You know, and it's so yeah, it's like, are they intentionally training culture wrong as a joke? You know, like in Kung Pao, like balls to fist style,
right?
You know, as so I call these archetypics because they're not archetypes. They're not satisfying. They don't hit home, but they're specifically tailored for a political or ideological agenda. You know, and it's not in any way a traditional archetype.
Propaganda.
Yeah, it's more like propaganda, and it's interesting. You know, Disney's been doing it for a while with a hidden female archetype that I've been trying to nail down, and it's something like I don't like where I am. I see more. I see I could be more, do more. I leave to go achieve that, but realize I should have understood or appreciated where I was from. You know, there's something like to leave and then to come back, and it's some kind of a hidden archetype that I've been trying to nail down that goes through a lot of the Disney female characters.
Is it because they're just putting the male monomyth on a female, and that's why it doesn't really?
I did not even consider that. Yeah, they're making the female leave the house of their father. That's what Ariel did, isn't it?
Right.
Brilliant, Alec. Yeah, I hadn't even considered this. That's what they're doing.
To me, it really looks like that's a lot of what's going on, where we're not
fascinating.
We're not making media for women. We're just taking archetypal male stories and then just making it a woman. It's pretty boring.
That's
not resonant.
That's really pretty groundbreaking, I think, that observation.
Oh, I mean, it's people. I mean, I'm not a big Jonathan Pajot fan, but I'm sure he said something similar to that in the past. When
who is that?
It's like Marvel.
Jonathan.
He's a symbolist. He is a Orthodox Christian in Canada who is friends with Jordan Peterson. So whenever you see like Jordan Peterson in an Orthodox church, it's probably because he's visiting Pajot or they're hanging out. But he's I think one of the founders of the Orthodox Arts Journal. If you look that up online, they have some cool articles. And he does a lot of social media stuff where he talks about symbolism in Marvel movies. And I just don't care about that shit. And I find it kind of, I don't know.
The only symbolism in Marvel movies that bugs me is whenever the Twin Towers, she had to give her soul at the Twin Towers, and the other one is about when the snaps his fingers and it dustifies everyone. And if you look at those two things combined about the Thanos saga, if you know anything about Judy Wood and Where Did the Towers Go and the John Hutchison and the dustification process, like these are very, very hush-hush conspiratorial things regarding like ufology and I guess false flag terrorism attacks on our own people. But suffice to say, there was seismographic evidence that the towers never actually hit the ground that day. They just vaporized, right? And so it, you know, and that kind of symbolism bugs me because it's like, well, you combine that with this archetypics idea, and it's like, well, these strange movies that they're giving us with such high production value being pushed so hard to every theater all over the world.
Dude,
what are they doing? What are they doing?
There you go. I'm glad you said that, because that's the thing that I've tried to argue in the past and kind of forgot about, the whole concept of when people throw at me, that's just a coincidence. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these movies. Nothing is just
right. Every detail is meticulously combed through. There's no way.
Now, and you mentioned money laundering in the last video. Right. Yes, there's definitely money laundering going on with these terrible movies. And to go back to Pat Joe, that's why, you know, I think I mentioned earlier, like, I'm not the biggest fan, because I guess the risk of someone who's doing that kind of work is you could be kind of spewing propaganda, not even mean to.
Interesting.
And the little bit that I've watched in his commentaries on symbolism and contemporary media, initially he says some cool stuff, especially when talking about like feminist theory and how it's popping up. But some of the other stuff, I just wonder, well, kind of like the same with Peterson, who I am sympathetic to. The same with Andrew Tate, who I am sympathetic to. They've done wonderful things for men. Kevin Samuels too, done incredible things for men, got them thinking in different ways. But then again, there's also stuff going on there where it's like, I mean, Andrew Tate's dad did work for the CIA, so come on. I can't help but when I see any of these people, Peterson, Pajo, to a lesser extent, you know, they're actors. I'd like to think that they're just doing their own thing and making a difference in the world, but
well, you know, I
take it with a grain of salt.
No, I hear you on that. Like, for instance, Graham Hancock. I listened to him for years, you know, and he's so convinced an asteroid's going to hit the Earth. And his big answer for this is that we need to weaponize space right now to blow that asteroid out of the sky. And it's like, well, okay, Graham, you're pushing for the weaponization of space, regardless of what
Star Wars, Grammy.
It's like whatever you think, this might actually be possible in the next little while. So if we're putting a big gun up there, who's holding the trigger?
Guns in space. The same people that don't want us to own guns are the people who want to put guns in space.
And it's like, Graham, I'm with you on almost all these other topics, with the exception of a few details that he kind of skims over. He's like, oh, we know this now. But you said 5 years ago that you knew this other thing and it contradicts it, but whatever. Besides that, Graham, if you're going to push for the weaponization of space, I know he'll never hear this,
he's a curmudgeon, man.
Somebody's got to hold the trigger, right? So then you're automatically talking about a world police or a unification one world government. And if you look at the diversification of any species, any ecological system, if we make a one world government and we homogenize all of this, one thing could wipe us out culturally. Fuck that.
That's already what's been happening, and you touched on that earlier. I almost makes you wonder, you know, he was saying some really provocative stuff, the whole like things just keep getting older. I don't know exactly what he means by that, but I take it as we're being lied to. Let's just make things older and older and older and older and older and older. Or like, that's too big for me to comprehend, so I'm going to move on. And so I wonder if someone got to Graham at some point, and that's why he went from the talking head who was saying
he's got grandkids, man.
Yeah, there you go, bro. Exactly.
That's all it takes. That's why Bernie folded. I'm almost positive.
Yeah,
he's got grandkids, bro. It wasn't about the millionaire book deal. No, he's got grandkids, and he didn't want them to be part of the Clinton body trail. That's all it is. That's all it is. Simple as that.
Men are afraid of dying now too. Now I get it. You're talking about like people in your family being hurt, but
I'm so ADD. What was I talking about?
To give their lives for something. I know I am. You know, every other thought is like, oh, should I say that? You know, I need to learn just because something's true. I don't need to open my mouth. But I'll tell you, my experience so far has been when I've burned bridges, I've actually ended up ascending to something higher, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, when you're
maybe
forced,
it won't always be that way, but
when you're forced to finally do it, I know a lot of times.
In my experience, I burn bridges, so I have no choice. It's not just because being an asshole and fucking my life up. It's more like I don't want to have anything to ever do with this institution or anything like it. So shoot, I'm going to fuck you on my way out the door, because I'm not ever going to be in that industry or whatever. And the horror that family and friends and acquaintances have shown to me. But dude, it's like, I guess at the end of the day, people see that you're authentic and just see like, yeah, man, I would never say that on Facebook, or I would never say that in a meeting, but you know what? Never have to doubt where Alec's coming from, And I know people disagree with me. I mean, I've got people coming at me all the time, and it must be my fault, right? If it keeps happening, it must be something about me. But
what do they do? What do they say?
Well, just going back to character assassination stuff. Ever since I've been a single man, there's already kind of an innate sexual threat going on. So I think it's really easy for people to come at you. Lucky for me, in those specific situations, when they've been women who have tried to allege some kind of like predatory stuff towards them, glory to God, they've always been women with a history of making false accusations. So when I do hear through the grapevine, it's like, yeah, that chick that said that shit about JoJo, last summer, and we all thought he was an asshole. Well, now she's claiming, that since you've had a mustache, you've been a child molester or something. I mean, not literally that, but just trying to come up with extreme examples. But
I was gonna bring that up today. I was like, oh, you're rocking a different look.
Yeah. People will it used to be like a man's gay. That's what. And when I taught high school, my sweet little kids, I'm a single dude. I'm a bachelor, so they'd be like, Mr. Hawkins, are you gay? Stuff like that. But your pseudo leftists in the workplace, their go-to is to be, oh, he made me uncomfortable. When he told me that I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing at work and to get back to work or whatever. It's like, yep, there you go. And same when I was an undergrad and grad school, just you gotta be really careful with how you thrive, because there's going to be people there, men and women, who are just going to try to talk shit about you behind your back. And my friends have pissed me off before, but I'm so grateful to have friends that call me on my shit, man. I would much rather have that than people who are saying one thing to my face than turning around and being like, listen to what Alex said. I told him it was a great idea, but it's actually stupid.
It goes beyond just sexism stuff too. I was 20 years in Memphis. I've had so many discrimination stories I could tell you against me. Imagine, dude. But one of the last times I was heading up the Omicron and Lexmark. What was their distribution center? Can't remember. Anyway, so I was heading up their quality control department, and this other lady who worked at a different department decided she wanted my position, and she got it. And I got fired, and they never told me why.
I've seen that happen several times.
Apparently, somebody heard that I may have said the N-word. What?
Right. Yep. Oh yeah. Bullshit. Oh yeah. Right. So if they don't come at you with the.
So I lost that position, and that's one of the reasons I got out of Memphis. It's like and the whole thing about modern leftism and the culture we're in is like it takes all the worst things that we've tried to overcome and turns them on their head and says, well, it's okay if you do it against the white man.
Right.
And this is another thing of postmodern Marxism. It's just another way to tear a nation apart. We're a nation of white men, tear us apart, bring in.
Right. They already did it to the black men. We took all these black fathers and threw them in prison.
Right. Destroy the good thing. yeah, back before the welfare state, there were more successful Black homes, and the fatherlessness was lower in the Black community. And then JFK got assassinated. Lyndon Johnson initiated the welfare state. JFK was not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the things that he was going to talk to the American people about. And that fucked us.
It makes me so bad, man.
I know.
To have been a very sad, scared, lonely boy, which that trauma has been great, because I think that I'm way better off than if I had been protected from all that stuff. My sisters went to private schools. I did not. Again, that kind of sexism thing, but it's a good sexism because it worked out for me. I'm glad my sisters could be protected and I could see, the reality of it. But I feel so sad for black men, young men, and white boys. But since I live in the deep South, where I'm, even though I do see Hispanic children, it's a lot of white and black people, and I just feel so bad, because while the white folks can kind of be protected in a certain sense, when I see young black men, they are just, they're getting totally fucked over. There's just so much stigma, and
that's one of the things that fucking hurt me.
You feel like you're walking around feeling like people are afraid of you, and I can relate to that. But I know a black man feels that more than I do. I know a kid that's not even in his teens yet, and when he's in his teens, he's feeling that. But then you're also just society telling you everyone hates you and everything's designed to put you down, and that white guy is innately evil, but he's going to always have it better than you. And it's just like, man, what? Just so much psychic noise and garbage, and I just can't imagine, man. I can't imagine. I'm talking about my white boy blues, but I really, I don't know, dude.
I told you I was a senior building engineer at Westside up in Fraser, and running around dealing with emergencies. The heaters broke. Got to talk to contractors about this and this, and you see, obviously there's lots of bad kids, but there's some good ones too, man. And it's like, hello, Mr. Michael, how are you doing today? Mm-hmm. Put a smile on my face, man. And coming up here to Arkansas in these last few years, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about that little boy and wondered, like,
man,
if my influence could have helped his life, and what am I doing up here? Like that one kid.
Be nice to people, don't get stepped on, but be nice to people. People just want to feel better. Especially the people who do fucked up stuff in their own fucked up way. They're just trying to feel better.
So I I felt an energy vacuum that was pulling my good father energy in. It's like, this is a good kid, man. I just wanted to put my arm around him and be like, son, let me talk to you for a minute. What's going on in your life? Like it just gave me, it's just thinking about it now is like, there's such a loss.
Yeah. I firmly believe that we have forgotten that it's important to be feared, and that respect comes along with that. And so men have so much shame because they know that their just physical presence scares people. And so you have all these young men who are walking around feeling shame for everything they perceive. This is just speculation, but I can't help but project my own experience as a white man onto the experience of a black man. And okay, if I'm experiencing this, let's just go ahead and assume that for him it's like 20-fold.
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up with a couple of black guys. Donnell Riddle was one of them. He was a good friend of mine, one of the best artists in school. We used to have competitions. Which one of us was stronger? Which one of us could draw the best robot, and he won that competition. His robot was better than mine. So I checked up on him last year. He's in prison for life. Fuck.
Man, yeah. Well, that's what this country does, man. We throw black in prison.
I wrote a paper on this, trying to understand it. I called it the minority retort, calculating what was it called? The minority retort, calculating the. It was too clever of a fucking title. Something to contextualize the continuum, and it was about the carceral continuum, about how the hood and the prison system are basically just one big cycle. Especially when you have a lot of the fathers already in prison. It's like, well, if you want to measure up to your dad, how are you going to do that? Their initiation is quite clear. They have a way of becoming men, and to go visit their father and go to the place of their father, they go to prison. It's part of their initiation, and that's that. They're with what we've done with the welfare state plus the carceral continuum. We've taken something of the hero's journey of because Black people have a strong spiritual connection to the old warrior spirit, that African warrior spirit. It's very strong. Yeah. That's why if you go into a Black church, it'll move you. It really it'll move you. And so it's 100%. Like they've taken this hero's warrior energy and warped it and made the Black man a slave to his own warrior impulses. And this prison system cycle just keeps them down. And it's like, we need a new initiation for men that it's so hard to think about. It's one of those things we're going to have a lot more talks to discuss it and like really try and nail down what's going to happen. But I'm late for another appointment.
Well, glory to God, because we would just keep talking. We would just keep talking.
Man. I know. It was a good one. All right.
Man, I'm loving this. Thanks for having me on the show again, Michael.
Yes, sir. That was fun. I'll catch you next time.
All right, bro. Have a great day. Stay beautiful.
Later.
Bye.